and welcome to our webinar, How Your Spending Changes in Retirement. It will run for about 45 minutes. It's being recorded and will be available shortly. My name is Zoe Nikakis, and I am part of First Super's marketing team. We begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay our respects to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us today. Firstly, thank you for joining us tonight. We're excited to be here. We encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Questions are anonymous and we will do our very best to answer them all. Before handing over to our financial advice team, there are a couple of important housekeeping items I need to cover. Tonight, you will hear from members of First Super's financial advice team and our guest speaker, Misha Schubert, CEO of the Super Members Council, We will cover the retirement questions we most often get asked, such as, how do I compare with other retirees? How do I know if my super is going to last? What options are available to me? How have other retirees spent lump sums in the past? And what are the main reasons for retirement? We will then take your questions. On to the disclaimers. Wouldn't be superannuation without disclaimers. The content in this presentation has been prepared by First Super and may not be used or reproduced without prior written consent. The information in this presentation is accurate as of today's date. First Super has engaged industry fund services to provide financial advice to our members. All our financial advisors are authorised representatives of IFS. Further information regarding the cost of advice is set out in our financial services guide. The general advice warning. The information in this presentation tonight explains concepts, strategies, and ideas in a general way. If you feel it could be applicable to your personal situation, we recommend you obtain financial advice before taking any action. Let's start with some information about First Super. We're an industry super fund with more than 70,000 members and $4.67 billion in funds under management. We have strong industry links, as you can imagine. We have a dedicated member services team and provide local personalised service. You can take us with you for life, from accumulation as you transition into retirement and finally into a retirement income account. Let's meet the team. Joining us tonight is Andrew Jewell, our Executive Manager, Financial Advice and Education, and Financial Advisor, Jason Bruce, with our warmly welcomed guest speaker, Misha Schubert, CEO of Super Members Council. The Super Members Council is a strong voice for more than 11 million Australians who have 1.5 trillion in retirement savings managed by profit-to-member superannuation funds, including you. Its purpose is to protect and advance the interests of super fund members throughout their lives, advocating on their behalf to ensure superannuation policy is stable, effective, and equitable. Let's welcome Andrew.
Thank you very much, Zoe. And welcome everyone to our webinar here tonight. So as Zoe mentioned, we're talking and explaining about what happens when people do retire and what do their spending habits start to look like in that respect. And as we can all appreciate, there is no typical older person. Everyone's personal and financial situation is very unique. Even the meaning of retirement is actually changing from years gone by where when someone retired, they received a lump sum and just how they were perceived by the society, really at a larger scale, and just what their community activities were. And that is changing more and more as we grow. But there are some typical phases within retirement. There are certainly those pre-retirement years where people start to focus and start to pay attention to what their retirement is potentially going to look like. And of course, they've got the burning questions about, do I have enough and how much do I need? And there's certainly more and more looking at being debt-free, because that's not necessarily always the case as people reach their retirement years. And of course, you know, they're conscious about their health as such. And then really when they do step into retirement, we tend to describe there's three distinct phases, such as the active years, which is where the member wants to really spend time with their family and friends or enjoying hobbies. And of course, travel is very much on the agenda for a number of our members as well. And some people start to find that the house is rather a little bit too big now that all their children have moved out, and they're certainly looking at downsizing or maybe relocating to the coastal line, or even into the green trees, changes that we've seen in the past as well. But as people progress through their retirement years, health does catch up with everybody, and you tend to slow down. And consequently, people start to spend more time at home. And as that starts to occur, the travel and the leisure costs start to go down as well. So there is a significant change in how people actually are spending their income or their retirement savings. And of course, we all get to that point at some point in our lives where we need the assistance and support of our relatives, our friends, and of course, the wider health community as well. And we start to pay attention to more active care, retirement villages, and even residential care in those regards. So when we're talking about retirement, and we often do refer to the ASFA retirement standards, and let's just capture this just for a moment in time, just to paint a little bit of a picture in that regards. It makes a number of assumptions. It's modeling. It assumes that the person owns their own home outright. They've reached the pension age, and they're entitled to the age pension as well. And what this model actually does is starts to describe two different types of lifestyles. Modest, which is where we describe that the family home is the center of the person's retirement years, maybe because of family reasons or just because of the lifestyle, the garden itself of that nature. And then there's also the comfortable lifestyle where people are very active. There's lots of travel involved, especially overseas, and consequently there's a higher need of income and funds that are required around it. The thing with this model is that it's just providing benchmarks, bookends, if you want to describe it, because no one fits into these models perfectly. And in actual fact, as I mentioned before, what people's needs in retirement income differs greatly as well. And then really on this particular point, it's a great segue into the Super Members Council and some research that they have actually done, which is very beneficial, we believe, for our members to understand about where it is that they fit into the retirement years and how do they compare to others as well. So what I would like to do is actually hand over to Misha.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andrew. And thank you to the First Super team for the fabulous work that they do. Thank you to all of you who've joined us tonight. You've done the smartest thing you can possibly ever do when it comes to your super, and that's to be engaged, to speak to your super fund and to really try to actively think about how you're going to use your super and how to interact with your super. As Andrew said, I'm Misha Schubert. I have the great privilege of being the CEO of the Super Members Council and being an advocate for the interests of 11 million everyday Australians across our country to make sure that the superannuation policy settings and legislative settings that sit around super, that safeguard all of our retirement savings, remain strong. And to ensure that we're always kind of thinking about how do we keep making further improvements to the super system to deliver really powerfully for millions of Australians. I want to say really importantly at the outset, we've got some really exciting research insights that we're going to share from some powerful work that we've done with our data and analytics and modelling capability that will really potentially help you to see sort of how your retirement compares to some of the large scale trends that we're seeing across the Australian population of retirees. But I also want to stress that I am not a qualified financial advisor, and so none of what I'm going to present tonight is in the realm of financial advice. So we'll be referring you back to the fabulous team led by Andrew and Jason at First Super if you've got further questions around the sort of particular financial advice strategies that you might want to be thinking about. But I think it's really helpful sometimes when we look at those big data sets and see what those trends are, because sometimes it can spark our own realization that we need to talk to someone about whether we're in the right circumstance for us or whether we actually could benefit from a further conversation and engagement. So let's jump into some of this large scale data and want to show you the work that our team did earlier this year. If we jump to the next slide, this was some fabulously interesting research that we did for a major submission to a Treasury consultation that happened at the beginning of this year. The Australian government is thinking more deeply as we've got sort of 2.5 million more Australians on the runway to retirement in the next decade. Yes, you heard that right. 2.5 million Australians heading to retirement in the next decade. The government is thinking more actively and Parliament is thinking more actively around how do we really help more Australians prepare for that transition out of working life phase into retirement and make the retirement part of the super system even more effective and strong. So we've done some really important work here through our team to look at what's happening in large-scale data across the super system for retirees. Our team crunched the numbers on millions of de-identified data records to look at what's actually happening for millions of Australians as they approach retirement or tip into the retirement phase. And I think this is really valuable data if you're, already a retiree or you're about to hit that moment in your life, to think about, well, how do I compare to those broad sort of system trends? So we'll take you through some stuff. If you've got questions, by all means, pop them in the chat, but we'll whip through this material as fast as possible. Firstly, let's talk about the expected age of retirement, because as a data nerd from way back, I find this always really interesting. The slide you can see on the left is the age at which people have been retiring, expected age of retirement for Australians. And what you can see is a couple of things. So those higher bars where you've got those bursts of more people reaching retirement age or deciding to tip into retirement, expecting to retire, correlate around a couple of key life events. So 60 is the first time we see one of those big jumps up, and that's the age at which people can start to draw down their super, move into that retirement phase of super if they choose, and start to move into a retirement phase product. So that's, we see a first surge of people who hit 60 and go, right, I am going to enjoy the benefits and take super from an abstract concept to a lived experience. We also then see those two next big bars. So the age pension qualifying age before 2017-18 was there at 65. So that's when the next big burst happened. People go, you beauty, I'm eligible for the age pension. I'm off to live my retired life. And then the next big bar is at 67, which is where the age pension qualifying age moved to from 2023-24. The next big burst is around the age of 70, and then we see 75 and 80. So milestone birthdays, ding, 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 tend to be a popular kind of trigger for people to think, maybe I am ready to retire and move into the next stage of engagement with their super. Amazing how blowing out some candles can really focus the mind on, the delightful things you might be wanting to do with your life. But when we also look at that second chart on the right, it shows us some really interesting statistics on the percentage of Australians who are continuing to work until later in their lives. So interestingly, you can see the little kind of orangey red terracotta kind of coloured bars at the bottom are people who are no longer in the paid labour force. But the darker grey bars are people who are working full-time, and the lighter grey bars are people working part-time, and the top section, people who are unemployed. So you can see when you start to get to that realm of about sort of between 60 and 65, you have that big shift from many people from full-time and part-time employment into the retirement phase of people with super. So interestingly, about a third of Australians who have super are no longer in the workforce by age 63. And about 33%, so about similarly, about a third have accessed their super, roughly a third by 63. By 67, it's roughly 2/3 of Australians have tipped out of the labour force, and 71% have accessed their super. So that differential between 68% and 71% tells us there's some people who've left the paid workforce, who've still in the workforce, but some of them have started to access super as well. So there's an interesting thread we'll come back to. And by age 72, 76% of people are no longer in the labour force, and 83% have accessed their super. And so you've got some older people there in those sort of latter decades who are, sometimes still in the workforce, tending to work part-time there, but also accessing the fabulous benefits of superannuation, which is an Australian public policy miracle. And we should never rush past what an incredible thing that we have built together as Australians. We could jump to the next slide, please. So why do people retire? Because it's fun, I think. When we've dug into sort of some of the main reasons that tend to spark that move into retirement. However, one of the things that the big large-scale data shows us is that health, or the health of a family member, is the single biggest reason that most Australians give for that transition into retirement. And indeed, we can see from our broader data work that, in fact, for some Australians, ill health or the ill health of a family member ends up meaning they retire earlier than they may would have chosen to in normal circumstances, but because health and family are, you know, the key touchstones of our lives, that is the single biggest reason why people make that transition. Also, there are other reasons why people give for a life without work. I hear you. Their age, again, those milestone birthdays, kind of very mind focusing. For some people, it's in the circumstance of a redundancy where that's the moment where they think, well, actually, I'm at a point where I do have super and I can transition to retirement. Problems or difficulties at work can be another cause. Others, but also look at that second bottom bar from the on the left-hand side there. My partner had already retired. I'm heading off to work each day and they're sort of staying in bed with the cup of tea. Also, I hear you. Yeah. These sort of data sets are also really interesting when you're thinking about your own comparator circumstances to what's happening in the broader Australian population. But the health trigger for many people to move to retirement is sort of the really key thing that sort of stands out there for many people, you know, as the single largest factor there. We can jump to the next slide, please. Another really interesting trend that we are following closely in the large-scale data is looking at that issue about housing and home ownership in the Australian context. There's obviously been an increasing focus in our discussions as a country about home ownership and the increasing prices of houses across our community and across our country. And so as those sort of prices have risen over a longer period of time, as some people have gotten into home ownership later in their lives, in their working lives, we're seeing a sort of rise up in the percentage of people who reach retirement age still with some of their mortgage debt to pay off. And so we'll sort of tip into a conversation also about what we're seeing in the large scale data about people who reach retirement age and able to access their super, then potentially using a lump sum to just, you know, to pay off the remainder of a mortgage at that point in their lives. But if you look at this data, you see that shift there at the bottom of that sort of the third line in that sort of first slide, first stanza of data there. So from 1999, we had about 16% of all Australian households who reached retirement age and still had some part of their mortgage to pay off. That's grown to around 41% of households who still had a bit of the mortgage to pay off by 2019-20. So that trend has risen. And then when you combine kind of mortgage debt remaining with other sort of personal debt, so not including credit card debt, but other forms of personal debt, bottom right-hand corner on that table, you've got 48% of Australians who reach that age of retirement, the move into super, and then they've still got some debts to discharge at that point in people's lives. So that's a trend that's continued. And again, it's sort of for us as a kind of as a policy advocacy voice into the public policy discussion, one of the things that we're often inviting politicians to think about, parliamentarians to think about, is making sure that people have got, you know, that changing picture covered in the kind of policy settings around super. We jump to the next slide, please. What are people doing when they are withdrawing their lump sum? So again, some more data from very large scale data sets looking at some of the ABS retirement and retirement intentions work that the Australian Bureau of Statistics do. So fascinatingly, again, you'll see in that sort of left-hand column, the vast majority of people who are paying off the mortgage or buying a home with a lump sum when they withdrew a lump sum at the point of retirement. Again, really great to talk to your super fund to check about your right decisions for you in various circumstances. That's what we're seeing from the larger scale data there. You've also got people sort of saying they're investing money at that point, paying off a car or a vehicle. I know a lot of people get, you know, buy the caravan and start, you know, in one direction or the other around Australia. Investing in a super pension scheme, clearing debts, paying for a holiday, or helping family are the other reasons that we can see that people give in that long range data and the Australian Bureau of Statistics information. And how do people with low, moderate and high super balances spend their lump sums as we enter retirement? That's the chart on the right. And you can see the dark blue bar being people with lower balances, the grey bar being people with moderate balances, and the maroony coloured bar being people with high balances. So again, there's a pretty even spread across some of those categories between people who've got different levels of balances at retirement, but using it to live on, paid off the mortgage, put it in the bank, paid for a major new item, a car or travel, paid other debts, invested it, or using it to pay rent. Again, really encourage people to talk to the financial advice teams to make sure that you've got the right decisions for you at each point in your retirement planning and phases. We jump to the next slide. Inactive accounts. This was a piece of data that really stood out at us when we looked at that large scale data as well. So obviously, we looked at this really large scale data set of funds that collectively represent over 8 million members, looking at de-identified records to understand what's happening at the big picture level across the system. So what you can see in this chart, let me unpack what this means. So between those two, the navy and the kind of brownie bar there on the left-hand side, the pension and the pension with an account-based pension, you've got around 40% of people who are in an account-based pension who also have an accumulation or a savings account within super. So they've got essentially two accounts running, their retirement phase account and their accumulation account. But that maroon bar tells a really interesting story. So you've got just over half of accounts for members aged 60 and above who still have a savings account or an accumulation account, but they're not actively contributing to that account anymore. Now, for us, that raises the question about why is that? And again, each person's circumstances might be different. For some people, they may be choosing to keep open a second accumulation or savings account because occasionally they pick up a bit of continuing paid work, even though they've moved over into the retirement phase of the system. But for others, it might just be that they don't yet know what to do and they haven't had someone give them the benefit of some advice and a really great steer on what they should be doing at that point. It could be that sometimes people have lost track of a super account and they have multiple accounts and they haven't all been consolidated into one. So it's just a good little prompt, I find, to when you look at these large scale data to think how much have I tidied up my own circumstances, and noting that, just over half of accounts for members aged 60 and above have got an accumulation account that they're not continuing to make active contributions into. It's a good little alarm moment for us to think, well, what else is going on there? If we jump to the next slide, we can actually see the balance distribution, and this might help us to unpick some of the story about what's going on there. So interestingly, you've got the balances of inactive accounts. So on the left-hand side, you can see 16% of those people aged over 60 and over who've got an inactive account have a balance of less than $1,000. So maybe it's sort of parked there just in case. That next column is balances under $25,000. So when you look at that sort of picture together, that's where a lot of those are concentrated. So balances of up to 25K is where the sort of lion's share of people are when they've got an accumulation account that's inactive post the age of 60. But then there's still some others, at those other balance ranges across the system as well. On the right-hand side, you can see the sort of withdrawals without rollovers into the retirement phase there. So for those who've chosen to withdraw their super completely, 2/3 had balances of less than $25,000 and 84% had balances under $100,000. And around 4% of withdrawals from the system had balances of $500,000 or more. So a relatively small proportion of them, but a lot of people who are retiring now, of course, many of us have, many of you will have worked really, really hard across your working lives, but may not have had superannuation paid for your full working lives. And of course, we've had the sort of gradual step up of super contributions through our lives as well. But it can make a really big difference to engage more actively with your super and think about where you need to be making those key decisions to make sure you're getting the most, the best use of your super and how it works for you. And I know the team are really always delighted to help. If we jump to that final slide, the next thing I can put the very last one, reasons for inactive accounts. And this is another great reminder about the value of engaging with the team. If you look at the reasons that people give for why they say they've got those inactive accounts, it's fascinating. So obviously we've got over on the left, I'm not working right now, but I might later is one of the reasons people give. That second set of bar charts below middle and higher balance recipient holders. I've got other income, so super from a pension or elsewhere. So hence the sort of our working hypothesis that sometimes people may have those two accounts, and we know that from other data sources that we've looked at as well. I wanted to avoid the minimum drawdown retirement. So obviously when you tip over into a retirement phase product, there are some minimum drawdown requirements there. So again, talk to your team, make sure you're in the right circumstances for you. I wanted to avoid the minimum, the next one is I wanted to leave my super in inheritance. But that next one is the one that I think really put a light bulb on for me. I didn't know what to do with it or how. And again, you know, what we know from the system is, and we know from people across our engagements with many retirees, that sometimes people are like, I just didn't quite know what to do, so I did nothing. Well, I'm going to encourage you to do something and to lean in to seek that bit more information and active advice, because you can make a really big difference to your finances and your life circumstances and the choices and the freedoms you get to make. So strongly encouraged there. And that final one is just, I haven't decided yet. So having a think.
Right.
And then just finally, we lumped up to the very last slide, reasons for inactive. This is the breakdown of at and above minimum drawdown rates once you've actually accounted for lump sum payments. So again, we've sort of factored in this. One of the interesting conversations that's been happening in Australia in the last year or so has been a conversation about whether people are living too frugally once they tip over into retirement phase, and whether they think, oh, I'm really worried that my super will run out, so I'm just going to absolutely just only draw down the bare minimum that I'm required to try, and possibly living more frugally than they need to. We wanted to test whether that's actually right, whether people are thinking that way, or whether they've got some great advice and they're really leaning in and making their super work as strongly and effectively as they can for them. So these charts really tell that story, which shows us that those maroon columns are people withdrawing above the minimum drawdown rate once they move into that retirement phase. So a lot of people actually do seem to be making really active choices there to draw down to really support their lifestyle that they want to maintain into retirement, and aren't just living on the bare minimum once you account for those sort of both the lump sum drawdowns they might do to pay off a mortgage or other things, and then the week to week or fortnightly to fortnightly drawdowns they make there. So that seemed to be a really interesting part of the picture to us as well. I think that is our final slide. Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you about what's happening in the Broad. Thank you to all of Australia's retirees for working so hard in the service of the nation in your working lives, and I hope you're enjoying the fruits of your labour now that you're in retirement phase, and seeing how powerfully super works for all of us. Well done you, and back to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Misha. Some really interesting research analysis that's been done there, especially around the minimum drawdowns. And you could see in that previous chart that as the people get older, they're starting to draw down less against their superannuation account, which kind of reflects very much back to what we mentioned earlier around those phases of retirement. So yes, as people get older, they slow down, they start to spend less as well. And also just how members with balances in general over 100,000 are certainly using their superannuation in which to supplement their income. But interesting enough, there's a cohort of people there that have got less balances than that, and consequently they're still drawing down against it. And it could well be that they've been retired for a number of years and drawn down more of that balances to that point where they've got a lower balance, and they're just continuing to enjoy their retirement years around that. But I think very much to your point, and what the research showed, it's surprisingly how many people still don't know what to do with their super when they get to retirement, and what can I do with it, and so forth. And in some respects, if we go back to an earlier slide that we showed around the ASFA retirement standards, and again, it just reiterates that little bit about, even if you've got a balance of around $100,000, you can use that in conjunction with the age pension very effectively around it. So the age pension would pay you around about $42,000 for a couple for the maximum amount. So really what you're doing is you're drawing down an extra $7,000, $6,000 per annum from your superannuation balance, and hence those lower balances. That's how they can actually support the person's lifestyle and give them a better lifestyle than just relying on the age pension. And of course, people want to have a more active and lifestyle and do lots of traveling, you're going to need a lot more money. That's the basic reality of it all. And so you're looking for much larger balances as well. But as I mentioned, no one fits into these criteria. So we have plenty of members in the regional area where they can live a comfortable lifestyle well below that 72,000 around it. So it comes back to, I guess, in part, like I started the conversation off with, is everyone's quite unique in their situation and their personal circumstances. And quite interesting from the stats that you showed also about health and how much that actually acts as a driving factor in the people's decision. Because I know from a financial advice team, that's probably one of the biggest concerns that people have when they start thinking about retirement, and they hear about friends and colleagues who suddenly suffer a serious health issue, and consequently that's impacted their whole plans, and that's a bit of a worry for them by all those means around it. So fantastic research that the Super Members Council have done this. So thank you very much, Misha, for sharing that all with us. And in some ways that starts to come back to the next part of the presentation tonight, and that is, okay, yes, okay, we got a better feeling as a member. Where is it that I fit into this retirement phase? How do I compare to others? How much superannuation have I got, and drawing down? But what are other things that I should be aware of apart from just stepping into retirement and using my superannuation? And I'm going to actually hand over to Jason to talk about some of those services that we do offer that in regards. And we're going to start off with the retirement health check. So Jason, can you just give us an overview about what this is all about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Andy. So the retirement health check is reasonably new thing that we've introduced, and it's an offering by the financial advice team, and it's been really well received from our members who have taken part in it. The key thing for our members is it is complimentary, so it's part of your membership fees that you do pay. Takes us about half an hour, and what we effectively do is go through a graph and work through a graph, talk to you about what sort of retirement lifestyle you want, what assets you have, where your super is as well, and when you want to retire. And what the graph basically shows is three key things. So it projects how much super and savings that you might have when you plan to retire, if you're not already there. It tells us how long your savings might last, so whether you're on track to meet your long-term retirement goals, and whether you're able to meet the lifestyles, whether it's the comfortable, modest, or something in between. And it also overlays in not only your super, but also the age pension as well. So it shows when that's a source of income, whether you might have some lump sum expenses, and we can also work through what those active, passive, and aged care years might look like that Andy spoke about as well.
Sorry, is this available to members that are thinking about retiring?
Yeah, so it's a very good, I think it's really powerful when members are starting to think about retirement as well. So am I on track to do it? Can I do it? It's a really good encouragement to them to say, yes, I'm able to do it. Or on the other hand, no, I'm not. Maybe there's sort of a different lever that I might be able to pull, whether it's starting to contribute more to super. Maybe I can do something part-time. So it's a really good tool when you're starting to think about retirement, or whether you're already there and you want to see whether you can spend what you're spending now or more or less.
Yeah. And I think very much to that last point as well is that it's still available to our members that have retired if they just want to simply see if they remain on track and can they spend a little bit more. Some of our members, and you're going to touch on it later, may be coming into some funds and they want to add it to their super and they want to see what impact that has, and consequently can they increase their drawings down and have their superannuation last a lot longer. So, that's great. That's a service that we offer to them, but not everybody likes talking to financial advisors. They like to do it personally. They like to do their own research. So then we've got available, and now my system's not working. We actually do have a retirement calculator that's available on our website. Maybe you can just give a quick overview of this, and we actually got a video about how people can use this calculator. But Jason, would you mind just doing a quick overview of this?
Yeah, sure. So we'll jump in the video, which sort of explains how we do it theoretically. This one is a little bit more simple. It's a little bit restrictive in terms of the information inputs and the variability that you can do. In this example, we've got a couple that are age 68, wanting to retire immediately. They want to target a retirement income of $58,000 a year. They've got around about $180,000 in their super fund, so they're worried about how long that's going to last. They've got a little bit of bank savings of around about $25,000. Their household contents, their cars are worth about $40,000, and they're at a moderate risk profile. So, and they do own their own home. So we'll jump into this graph and see what that looks like for them. So what we'll do here is we'll go through a case study of a couple that are 68 and wanting to retire, and they just want to know whether they've got enough to do so, and it's obviously a key burning question. So on our website, on our homepage, if you hover over the forms and tools and click on the calculators link, on the second one there, the retirement projection calculator, we can click on and work through whether this couple's got enough. So in this case study, we've got a couple that are both 68 years old, and obviously in this case we want to include the partner as, and obviously if you're a single person, we'll just hit no there and we'll just make those calculations on a single person. So in the super retirement planner, we've got the income of both the individual and the partner. So we'll say this person was earning $50,000 a year and the partner earning $10,000 a year, working part-time and wanting to retire. As a result of that, the super balance for our members got around about 170 that they've built up. The partner only working part-time only has around about 10,000 in their super, but it all adds up and helps together. Now, we're not putting in any additional super contributions. Some people will do that when they retire. We'll say that this couple is not in a position to do so. So the combined investment assets, so these fields are optional. We'll put that in. So really we're wanting to put in any savings or shares or any managed investments. What we're not putting in here is any property investments. So just really the shares and bank funds. For this couple, they've managed to save $25,000. And the combined other assets, so what we're looking at here, it helps us with the Centrelink calculations in the background. Centrelink do look at your non-financial assets, so your contents, your cars, any boats, caravans, any other property outside of your principal home. We'll say this couple's pretty basic. They've got a couple of cars worth $30,000. Centrelink's valued their contents at 10, so we're looking at $40,000 there. And this couple does own their home outright. They don't have any debts. So we'll click on the show results. Now there is a bunch of assumptions that it makes here. So the first one is looking at the target income, and we just base that on the ASFA modest retirement standard. And that's something that can be easily changed, and we'll change that below. And then we'll get into the graph. So again, we're saying that they're retiring straight away at age 68, which is the default. Obviously, you can change that there. The target retirement income. So if you're not sure, we do have the ASFA standards that you can click on and give you a little bit of information. We can break it down from a yearly to a monthly, a fortnightly, a weekly amount, whatever you're comfortable in working through. This couple has done a budget and have come out that they want to spend $58,000 a year to meet all of their income needs, maybe a little bit of travel and all those expenses as well. So they don't need any lump sums from their super. You could have some renovation expenses, some travel expenses, maybe even the clearing of debt if you've still got a mortgage or any loans that you want to put on here. But for this couple, they've said we don't have any loans. The target retirement income will meet all our needs. We don't have any big travel needs or anything like that. And of course, we want to include the age pension. So we'll update the graph and have a look through that. So we've got the retirement age here that it points down to 68, and it shows us basically that our super is going to last until 91 or 92, which it reflects up here based on the $180,000 balance. So you can see here the primary source of income is going to be the combined age pension, which you can see underlying here. So that's going to be a very important part. The combined age pension, $47,502, meeting most of the target requirement income of 58 that we've done. The partner's income, obviously a small balance, so there's just a little bit underlying through here, which is very hard to see. but then the income from the individual members' super at the top, just topping us up from the age pension. And basically running out at 92. So this gives a pretty good indication to our members. All right, I'm able to retire. Shows you how long that money can last, and effectively what the retirement goal is. Look for more, I guess, complex situations where we've got a little bit more debt, some moving parts, some changes of income that you might want to do over the years. That's where the advice team can come in and do a little bit more of a comprehensive retirement health check. But this one does give a pretty good basic idea of whether someone's able to meet their needs or not.
Okay, so that's a good demonstration of the calculator that we've got there. But again, if a member has retired, can they use this calculator if they're not working?
Yeah, so you can use it if you're retired. The same thing with that salary income. Obviously, it would be zero if you're retired. It is just a little bug on this calculator itself. You do have to put in a figure that's not zero. So we'd normally just say just put in $1 there. But you can do that if you are already retired.
Great. I mean, all right, so let's get into some other parts of what happens in people's retirement. So nothing static at all. Some people may come into some money through inheritance, and maybe they're selling some shares or something of that nature, maybe even winning lotto. Can they add more money into superannuation?
Yeah, so you can add more money into super as long as you're under 75. You can put in additional contributions to super, whether you're working or not as well, for your after-tax contributions. It can get a little bit limited in what else you can do, especially if you're over 75. Your options get closed down pretty quickly there. But we do have a calculator as well on our website that can show you, especially if you are still working, whether it's worthwhile making additional contributions and you know, whether they're pre-tax or post-tax contributions are more appropriate for you.
Okay. And then in regards to the age pension, you know, what are some things that we're constantly reminding our members about?
Yeah, sure. So the main thing I always say to people is, look, just apply as soon as possible. If you're not sure if you're entitled for a payment, go and apply. Centrelink counted on the date of your application. So if your age pension age is 67, you put it off for a year's time until you're 68, and you were eligible at 67, they're not going to back pay you until you actually apply. So go ahead and apply it as early as possible. The second one there, the work bonus, a lot of people don't realise that they can work and still get the age pension. Some of Misha's data around them working part-time and stuff in retirement comes down to this work bonus. So you still can earn some income and get the age pension. The work bonus is effectively $300 each fortnight that you can earn from your wage that isn't counted towards the age pension income test. It also accrues over time if you're doing some seasonal or casual work, where you can build up a little bit more of a work bonus balance as well in that bank. The third thing there is look, the age pension is means tested. So the more assets you've got, the more income you've got, the less that Centrelink will give you. So some people think that they'll get nothing. And a lot of people will say, if I can only get $1 just to get the card. Well, there is an option if you're not eligible for any payment that you can actually get the Commonwealth Seniors Healthcare Card. So a lot of people don't realise that this is available if you're not receiving a payment from the age pension. You can get this healthcare card, which gets you some of those additional benefits that a pensioner would get. So your cheaper medicines and that sort of thing as well. A few considerations as you're going through your retirement years and you're of age pension age. So the first two, inheritance or a downsizer. So if you do come into some money from one of those two methods or something else, winning the lotto, as Andy said, maybe a little bit less likely than the other two, you do have to update Centrelink, and it may well change your payment. So make sure you're aware of that if you're receiving anything from inheritances or selling your homes, because there is an assets and income test which Centrelink will calculate your payment on.
And then just coming back to superannuation, some other considerations and options that members should be aware of?
Sure. So the downsizer contribution is one where if you've got your family home and you're looking to move to something smaller, You can put some of the proceeds into your superannuation fund. There is a few criteria that you have to meet. There's obviously a fair bit of information on our website or the ATO's website there, but you can do a special downsizer contribution, which is on top of and separate to your non-concessional contribution as well, which is basically limited to age 75. So if you're any older than that, you can't make those additional contributions. And with your retirement income account as well, so we can't add any money to it, unfortunately, but we can reboot it as well. So if you do a downsizer or you're looking to do a non-concessional contribution because you've come into an inheritance or something else, we can combine those monies with your existing retirement income account and set up a new pension with the full balance as well. A few considerations as you're working through retirement as well. So the risk and return trade-off is a very important one. Typically, our members will get more risk averse as they get older. They're looking to protect their capital as well. So making sure that your investment stream is right for you as you enter in retirement, but as those years change and as you change in retirement as well, you are a long time retired, so you may well have different thoughts and feelings as you get through retirement. Cash reserves as well. So having sufficient cash reserves there just to meet those emergency expenses. But see, when you're retired, your super is accessible, and we do get it to you fairly quickly when you need it as well. So having a little bit set aside there, but your super can also act as a cash reserve because of that third point, the accessibility of it. The last thing that we mentioned, obviously, when you're over 60 and you do open a retirement income account, any drawings from it are completely tax-free as well. It's non-assessable income from a Centrelink perspective. So the rules did change there in 2017. So post that, any retirement income accounts that you've taken out, it's tax-free, non-assessable income, which is fantastic.
And just as a reminder, how is it that superannuation and the age pension can work together?
Yeah, sure. So obviously when you're below age pension age, or if you're over the means test, your super is obviously providing you with all you need to meet your living expenses. But your age pension can act as a top up as well. And we look to use that in some combination, like we showed in that graph, where the age pension's providing a level of income support and your super account is just topping up. The good thing with your account-based pension, your income stream from your super, it is variable, so you can change that as your situation changes. So as you get more from the age pension, you can reduce what you're taking from your account-based pension, or as well as your needs change in retirement, you're entering into those more passive years, your income needs may reduce. We can reduce those payments as well, subject to the minimum payment that you have to take out. And we can take lump sums at any time as well. So our pensioners will often ask us for lump sums for that annual trip or things, maintenance of the house or anything like that. And First Super is very quick in terms of getting that payment to you as well.
And I think this very much ties back to the research that Super Members Council did and discovered it through their research, and that's a lot of members don't know what to do with their super. And this one is a prime example of what you can do and how you can use it with the age pension. And as you highlighted before, the age pension is a non-assessable income. Unlike, strangely enough, not many people are aware, the age pension is assessable income. So in these higher interest rates, if you've got large amounts sitting in a bank account, suddenly you could potentially up for tax, whereas if it sits in super, it's all exempt from that. So hopefully we've given you a lot to think about and given you a bit of the picture of where is it that you fit into the phase of retirement, whether you're there already or stepping into it. And as we've been mentioning throughout the webinar here tonight, the financial advice team at First Super is here to help you. So whether you're looking at trying to maximize your age pension, ways to boost your super because you come into some money, or you just simply want to know, am I still on track, or do I still have enough to enjoy the lifestyle that I'm wanting to do in my retirement years? This is where we can assist you. And in that last point as well, as we highlighted to you, there is the retirement calculator if you just want to play around with it yourself and just get a feel and you feel confident about using that calculator in that regards. So we've got some questions, but 2 questions did come in, so I'll pose them to you, Jason. One member came in and said that they are 63. They plan to retire at age 70. and just really want to know how much to put into their super to have a safe retirement in those regards. What would you be suggesting there?
Certainly with that, it's a good time to have a look at our retirement health check and our calculators to plug that in. Everyone's going to have a different set of circumstances in terms of what they've got in super now, what else they may have. Do they have any debt? What sort of lifestyle do you want to live in retirement as well? Is it that more comfortable retirement, the modest retirement? So there's a lot of factors going into it. So that's where we'd probably look to tease that out a little bit more with the retirement health check. And get you on track to see whether you're able to meet that need, and potentially do some other things with your super, or retire earlier, or have a few more trips or something like that as well.
Okay, and the last question, it kind of goes back again to some of the research or findings that the Super Members Council showed. We've got a person who's a pensioner, but they're working part-time, casual work, and they're just wondering, can they salary sacrifice? Can they add more money into their super?
Yeah, so certainly if you're under 75, you can add more money into super. It's obviously a great way to continue building that up when you're working. In terms of whether it's effective or not, our calculator that we went through in one of the slides on our website is very good in terms of putting in your income, and it'll break down what types of contributions are appropriate for you, whether that be your pre-tax salary sacrifice or your post-tax after-tax contributions there as well. So that'll be a good tool to work through for that individual.
All right, thank you very much. So to everyone that's joined us tonight, so thank you very much, and a special thanks to Misha from Super Members Council for joining us and being our guest speaker. We do very much appreciate it, your time that you've given to us. For our members or those that attended, there will be an email, a survey, so we'd love to get your feedback. What did you enjoy about tonight? Plus also share with us what other topics would you like to be included in future episodes as well. So we're quite open to feedback and suggestions. At the end of the day, we simply just want to provide information to our members that they find more beneficial than anything else. Plus also remember, on our website, we do have other webinars that have been recorded about people planning for retirement, or those that are stepping into retirement, things they should think about. And plus also, there's a whole series of short videos called First Talk that explain all different types of aspects around superannuation and retirement and planning for it, even about Centrelink and the asset and the income test. But from all of us here tonight, so thank you very much for joining us once more, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Good night.